karakia and council affirmation. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ihi akia nā te atukura, ihio, ihohu, tihei, mauri ora. Let us today affirm, councillors, we will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and always ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. Well, Selwyn District and its communities. We will. Take a seat. Welcome along to all our guests today. It's great to have so many people come along and being excited about a council meeting, like we all are always. And Malcolm is joining us via Zoom. Malcolm, your face isn't on screen, but we will be able to hear you if you have any thing that you'd like to raise during the meeting. And feel free to flick for a message if there's something particular on an item that you need to say. And yeah, we can hear you. You're nice muffled Malcolm sort of sound. Which is good. We're going to begin the meeting with our staff shout out, and this is a way of, as councillors, recognising some of the good work that staff do, and the shout outs is a piece, David, that you and the team have brought through the organisation to recognise excellent work. And so the shout out today, since the end of 2020, Nyan Bridie from the Learning have been nurturing a relationship with Selwyn High Schools and their pride groups, including teachers and students, to create safe and welcoming spaces for the district-wide PRISM group that meets. Nyan Bridie have hosted fun PRISM picnics on board and board games events in Selwyn libraries where young people can connect and make new friends from the LGBTQIA+ community, culminating with the recent diversity picnic during Pride. And more collaborations with the PRISM groups are already underway. And so Nye and Bridie are recipients of a little bit of Whittaker's Perry Biscuit chocolate, just to say thanks. So there's no apologies for the meeting today. Any identification of any extraordinary business? Haven't received any, none. Any conflicts of interest that people would like to raise? Only one matter that the public forum today content and quarrying, and there are councillors who will be sitting on the district plan review, and just when that is done, I just encourage you to step back from the table. It's a presentation that we're receiving. This is a public room, and you're allowed to be in here for that, but not stay for any discussion or be a part of any discussion around next steps and what we do with the public forum at that point. Deborah?
District Licensing Committee.
Great, thank you. So we move to the public forum, and Davina is here. Davina, if you'd like to come to the front of the room, and if others that have come with you would like to come, you're welcome to have some other people with you if you'd like as well. So Davina, we've allowed 10 minutes for this presentation, and there'll be a chance for some question and answers as well. But welcome to the council, and yeah, this is a chance for you to just share some of the things that are important to you. Thank you. I'll hand the floor to you. And if you wouldn't mind just pressing the right-hand button on the microphone, yeah, that turns it on. Thank you.
My time was at home and it came in at 9 minutes, so I will try my best. Okay, thank you. And can I just start by saying that before you start the time, thank you for allowing me the opportunity, and a big thank you to Reese for her support and helping me with this process. It's been appreciated. The forthcoming NPS regarding highly productive land will have repercussions for consenting in this region. Only 5% of the available land in this country is LUC 1 to 2 class soil, and only 14% of the land is LUC 1 to 3, with all three classes versatile with high potential for productivity. This region has a significant proportion of the country's HPL and is a vital part to play in the ensuring and safeguarding of food production for the future, not only for this region, but also nationwide. And every consent on this land adds up, and we then understand the saying, death by 1,000 cuts. This image shows the LUC 1 to 3 land in this region. It does extend further than shown, but it gives an indication. And the land shown north of State Highway 1 is coded. The blue areas bordered in red are LUC 1 to 3 land, and the green boxed areas are those indicated in a 2014 report submitted to Christchurch City Council regarding quarry rehabilitation. And those green boxed areas are sites identified by the industry as being potential sites. The blue boxed area was consented in 2020. All sites are fully inclusive or significantly inclusive of LUC 2 to 3 land and will be covered by the NPS, and have been covered by Section 15 of the RPS since 2013. With Roydon consented, it can be assumed the other huge sites, if applied for, will be consented. We have in effect lost Yelthurst, and Templeton is likely to follow, a significant portion of the west of the city and home to thousands of people. Quarrying causes valuable land to be removed. We all know that rehabilitation in this region is not undertaken in a timely manner, and we also know it's likely to be in the form of just 30 centimetres of soil which is grassed, very close to aquifers which may rise due to climate change issues. Pastoral use is the only viable option with regards to any crop growing, and food production on any commercial scale is not. Quarrying is not viable on this land, and it hasn't been for some time, taking into account the detailed provisions of the regional policy statement. There are alternatives for these sites, and yes, they may be a few k's further away from end use, but there are alternatives. There will be claims from the industry to justify their use. Expect claims of increased carbon footprint instead of the usual hand-wringing of increased transport costs. Well, the answer is this. They should lead the way in investing in and investigating alternative forms of transport, including the electrification of fleets in this fast-moving technological space, including on-site use. The Supreme Court has said outright avoidance is a response that is legitimately available under the RMA. Therefore, no consent should be considered on highly productive land, regardless of what mitigation or remediation is proposed by the industry. It's likely to be unproven and come with very high risk. Councils should not consider rolling the dice and listen to the industry, who have only one goal, and that is to maintain profits. The consequences do not bear thinking about. SDC have indicated they are adequately serviced by currently consented quarries, and Christchurch also has an adequate supply. Reporting from a consent hearing indicated there is between 23 to 28 years of available aggregate. There are a further 5 consents that have since been lodged or processed, taking that to 30 plus years if they're consented. Consenting at this rate is not sustainable management of the environment. Section 5 clearly references sustainable management with reference to at a rate. With climate change policies, the landscape in 30 years' time may be different, utilising different materials. There may be a reliance on aggregate. Remember, consent now activate unnecessary in here and now, which is not sustainable management of the environment. So if we have 30 years of supply, isn't it the right time to pause the consenting until we know what the needs will be in 30 years, to not grandfather in consents which may not meet the criteria of the replacement to the RMA? It allows time to review and evaluate the effects of all the current consents. For example, with climate change issues, we may find quarrying at only 1 metre above current water levels is not safe in the long term. We could be compromising drinking water of future generations in these areas. And I finish this section with a clear request that no applications are accepted for any land identified as being subject to the NPS, and ask that due regard be given to the fact that Winston's extension application encompasses purely LUC3 land. It should not be grandfathered in, as SDC have ample warning that the NPS is imminent, with the RPS already applicable. Section 5.3.12 of the Regional Policy Statement specifically addresses issues that result in reverse sensitivity effects that limit or precludes primary production. Therefore, the buffer should be applied where quarrying will impact on the productive properties of HPL. Studies indicate dust adversely affects plant growth and plant health, and it would not be enough to just blindly accept the report on behalf of any applicant, stating effects will be less than minor. Lincoln University have the experience, researchability, and most importantly, impartiality and independence to be the credible body on this matter. Any setback they recommend should be adopted. And now 2 setbacks. All councils have a duty under Section 23 of the Health Act to protect or improve health. And this starts with where activities are permitted and the land use consent falls at the feet of SDC. Ill health is evidenced by those who have quarries operating close by, which would not occur if setbacks were appropriate and condition breaches were dealt with. I'm asking that 1 kilometre is considered for the following reasons. Mitigation measures used are poor. Water is the measure of choice, which is limited in effectiveness but is free to the operator. Technology is available and used elsewhere that utilises water but will include dust collection systems, covered operations and out-of-hours ongoing mitigation. We do not have out-of-hours cover, but WIN does not abide by quarry operating times. And these slides show what can be used but would require investment. A single water cart does not come close to being able to control dust at the same extent, yet that is what we see used and is classed as best practice. With regular high winds in this region, PM10 and smaller can and does disperse high distances and certainly beyond 500 metres. A scientific experiment conducted through our university witnessed dispersal of 5 kilometres. And when in the UK, we had our cars covered with visible dust that had come from the Sahara. Once dust settles, it can and does become resuspended. It does not magically drop out at 250 metres, yet this is the distance that is cited by applicants and has become blindly accepted as factual. The compliance monitoring, response, investigating by our regional council is woeful and may indicate a breach of the Health Act. This is shown by ECAN's own reporting of how incidents from 2008 to 2018 were recorded, and a video will be shown to you today from 2021 of a dust impact where no action was taken against any operator. Quarries do not operate in isolation in this region. I've just got one more slide to go. Clusters evolve comprising of several operators with cumulative effects which when combined are significant for those in the vicinity. Commissioners make it clear they cannot take into account what is happening at other quarries and can only consider the application in front of them. They do not factor additional sources of noise, that additional exposed area, that extra operating plant, etc., to other like-for-like operations already consented. When considered concurrently, effects become significant. Yet the only recourse is through appeal at the Environment Court. The CARP indicated a cow barn would be 1 kilometre from a residential zone, a more significant setback than that of any quarry. Additionally, residential property owners must be given the same rights as those in residential zones. Being treated differently amounts to discrimination that is not provided for in the Health Act. This council sets the ball rolling with whether quarry is cited and therefore tips that first domino. The can has been kicked around for too long with no council wanting to take responsibility, and it's fair to say residents have had enough. ECAN say it's down to whether quarry is cited. Christchurch City Council say it's down to ECAN to enforce consent. Councils need to be reminded of their obligations under the Health Act because it is applicable to all councils, and residents agree. If the quarry is cited appropriately, where there is poor compliance monitoring, at least they have the buffer to offer protection. It is not acceptable for SDC to claim they do not need to factor health issues when making decisions on the basis this is the remit of another council or authority, that they only need to consider amenity issues. The Health Act, which is primary legislation, indicates otherwise. So I strongly urge that SDC be part of the discussions in the replacement of the RMA and ask for this 1 kilometre along with residents who will be submitting. And by doing so, you'll be taking a significant step to ensuring and showing that you are intent on being compliant with the Health Act. Reduce setbacks will increase health risks to the public, and it will send a signal that SDC may be given the impression that they believe the law does not apply to them, or the belief that nobody is going to be likely to be taking action. And thank you for listening. If I could just point out that last video I want to show, it's only 43 seconds long, to show you what impacts can be like. And the fact no action was taken, that's not unusual, unfortunately. Oh, sorry, thank you very much. Okay. I forgot about the cow barn. My name is Davina Penny and I'm the person responsible for videoing the impacts you are witnessing in this video. This was recorded between 1:20 and 1:40 PM on the 19th of January 2021 in Pembroke, Christchurch, where I was recording the dust impacts emitting from the Panroe quarries, those operators being Thornton Hogan and Ablett. The weather conditions at the time were high winds of significant strength. Thank you.
Great, Davina. Thank you for that presentation and for the pictures and the video that helped explain your points. Councillor, is there any questions that you have that you'd like to ask? Yeah, Murray.
Yeah, thanks. Fantastic presentation. You've done a lot of work there, and I'm assuming that you'll have a submission into our district plan.
I have made one, and I will be going to the hearing.
Yeah. Is it appropriate for us to ask for that information to be sent through so we can have further time to digest it? Is that?
Yeah, I think we'll take some time to discuss what the next steps are from here. But we know there's a district plan process that's underway at the moment, and we know that that will involve further hearings and discussions with others than ourselves at that point. So the things that you've given us today, I think we're great if even what you've read, if we could have a copy of that, and next steps would be for us to start to report back to us on the issues raised and where they will be either dealt with or what the things that we might be able to deal with more immediately.
Yeah, just don't want to comment knowing the district plan with deliberations here, so other comment I'll reserve for today. But yeah, I'd love to see that and be able to digest it further. So thank you.
Thank you. And as Councillor Lemon has said, you're submitted to the district plan review, and we'll obviously turn up to a hearing and give a similar presentation. You probably, I don't know, your 10 minutes might not be quite the same in that space, but well done on presenting a really clear message here to us today. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the main thing is, it does start with where the quarry is situated. If that first domino is in place, if there is no compliance monitoring or poor compliance monitoring, at least we're still protected. So, that is the big one. It really is.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
The next public forum today is the Youth Council, who are sitting down here behind me. If you guys want to jump up the front. We've got a few new faces around our Youth Council this year, and it's exciting to be able to hear what you're up to and plans are for the year ahead. So I'll let you introduce yourselves. I mentioned the microphone before. You just press the right-hand button to turn it on. It's on already, and you can just leave that way for your presentation.
Can you stop the video? Thank you. Hello, I'm Izzy Kennedy and I am Deputy Chair of the Youth Council this year. One of the reasons I joined the Youth Council was because I enjoy working with other youth in the community and meeting new youth.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Zion and I am the Secretary of the Selwyn Youth Council this year. I joined Selwyn Youth Council because I was encouraged by other councillors and I could see the change that we could help bring to youth and how we could give them a voice, which was something that I found quite meaningful. Yeah.
G'day, my name is Reece Missionori. I currently go to Lincoln University. I'm the second year, and I joined Selwyn Youth Council this year, and it's been a real pleasure. And I joined because it's part of my vision as well, going forward, because it aligns as well with my other roles that I have in Selwyn as well at Lincoln University. So I'm also part of the Future Leader program. So to be able to align the two, kind of, should I say, services to the community has been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can do more this year. And looking just to really help the next generation come through, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to shape the future of this district. And that kind of aligns with my philosophy as well, that, be the change that we want to be. So hopefully we can inspire more other young people to really be the change for this district, because at the end of the day, that's how we're going to move forward together. So we'll look to play the video here, and unfortunately, there's 16 of us, but unfortunately, there's 4 of us who are not in the video, unfortunately, and those are...
I'll point it out later.
You'll point it out, too easy. So we'll play the video for you. But...
create a positive environment.
I'm Connor Buckley, I'm 17, I go to Rolleston College, and I'm most looking forward to reviewing the tertiary scholarships process as part of the finance and funding portfolio.
Hey, I'm Lindsay, I'm 16, and I go to Lancaster Middle School. And the project that I am most looking forward to this year is the youth work with the Great Passion opportunity.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Reed. I'm 17 years old and I go to Lincoln High School. I'm really looking forward to helping out with innovative learning programs at libraries this year.
Hello, I'm Connor Mackay. I'm 15 and I go to Richardson High School. I'm year 11. And the project I'm most looking forward to is helping young people get involved in the environment and the arts.
Hello, my name is Liv. I'm 18 and I work at Programs in Lincoln. This year I'm part of the Youth Engagement and Democracy team, and I'm also running all the social media side for the Science Capital. And the thing that I'm looking forward to this year the most is just being able to see the youth have their say, get in the community and just be a part of it.
G'day, my name is Reese Missionary. I'm 19 years old and go to Lincoln University. I'm part of the Welcoming Communities team, and I'm really excited to be able to be a part of the citizenship ceremonies which are going to be happening this year.
Hello, my name is Sonia Lee and I'm 14 years old and I go to Lincoln High School, and I am most excited to deliver an event for Kids Fest which is focused on youth age. My name is Susanna Sampson and I'm 16 years old. I'm a first-time student at the Upper East College. The project that I'm most looking forward to working on this year is the Careers Explored. Hi, I'm Tony Bennett.
Hello, my name is Simon. I'm 17 and go to Darkfield High School. I'm most looking forward to working on the Tertiary Scholarship Fund and growing young talents around Selwyn.
Hi there, my name is Nyank Cepeda and I'm a Year 13 student at Ellesmere College. The project that I'm looking forward to the most is the Least in Consultation and also running the Selwyn Youth Council as chairman. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Thank you guys for watching. So I'd just like to point out that Scarlett, Jenny, Maggie and Hayley couldn't make a video and introduce themselves to you. Moving on, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, well, thank you for doing the introductions. It's great. And Reese, was awesome to have you at the last citizenship ceremony, and the conversations you already having, just sharing a bit of your story was great. And I met Connor Buckley, who's just on the Youth Council last week, who was really interested in changing the way New Zealand deals with being authentic and its transparent decision making in public bodies, and he's wanting to see change across the whole country, but was interested in thinking about how we make decisions in councils in a transparent method. So great that you've already made some changes and some impacts, and it was cool to hear what you're passionate about going forward. How did you determine who was going to be involved in what, and did you just pick something that you were passionate about, or was there a bit of delegation going on?
Our portfolios were kind of picked from, basically there was a evening where we were introduced to each portfolio, what we would get involved with and what changes we could bring. We then ranked on a scale of 1 to 6, which we would prefer, and using those scales we managed to create teams that were most willing to participate in them.
And you'll notice already, but there's twice as many people in Selwyn under the age of 14 as there are over the age of 65. So I'd be interested to know how you think we might engage with young people more as a district, and how you view your role in being able to do that and help us achieve our desire to make good decisions on behalf of all of our people in Selwyn.
One of the bigger things we're doing this year is, you saw on the video, Liv. She's doing a lot of social media things this year, and we're really getting that up and running, which I think is really cool, because social media is one of the biggest ways that youth interact with each other. That's one of the ways.
I think I agree with that as well. It's just really involving the youth in the sense in whatever they're passionate about, because I feel like we have to really cater to everyone, because everyone's different. So we have to really
listen to them. They have to be heard. So it's really important for us to be listening to them. What do they want? Because at the end of the day, that we can implement so many things, but at the end of the day, we have to listen to them. And so it's really important that we get their views and ideas, and then we can, I guess, create the best forward plan going with what we've got. So it's going to be really key for us, I think, going around listening to different perspectives, so we're able to form, I guess, a real diverse plan of exactly what we're going to do. But yeah, like a key thing is just engaging them through social media, as we know that the youth, a lot of them use social media, so that'll be one of the key, I guess,
We'll look forward to connecting with you on the things that we need to ask the community about as well, and if there's ways you think we can improve that consultation, particularly around the annual plan, the district plan we were talking about before. There's a representation review around how many councillors and how many wards and where should we be as representatives of Selwyn going forward. So those are some of the higher level things that would be good to have feedback on, as well as some of the more localised delivery of service things that we do as a council. Sophie.
Kia ora team, thank you very much for coming. I guess I just wanted to say thank you, and also really looking forward to working with you guys this year, because it's the structure's changed a wee bit about how the projects work, and it's obviously last year was a bit strange anyway because meetings were mostly on Zoom and it kind of hindered anything active last year. But the way that it's structured this year with the projects, really looking forward to seeing how it's more of a youth development focus than it's ever been before, and it's going to be really interesting to see what you guys come up with and how it all fits into what we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Simon, was there something you wanted to say before?
It's fine. It was just going to add on. We were just going to talk about how we could use existing structures within schools to kind of connect with the youth, and like you said, the 14 and under, well, the population 14 and under, in order to kind of get a youth voice involved.
Great. Shane.
Ai, tēnā tātou katoa. Tēnā koutou katoa. He aha te mea nui e te ao, i rangatei. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really like the walking down the hall part. That was pretty cool, very engaging. And really respect your work, and although I've stepped back, I still admire your work from afar. Well done. Engaging our rangatahi into employment, can you give me some feedback on how you look to do that over the coming year, career pathways and such like, exposed?
One of the project teams is called, is it Mahi? None of us are on the Mahi team. There are, it's one of the 6 project teams. So they are looking at getting youth into employment and things like that. I don't know a whole bunch about it because I'm not on the team, but they would be the ones.
Awesome. Did you say that was Mahi, was it?
Yeah.
Mahi. Lovely. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come in today and sharing that with us. And through Sophie's engagement on the Youth Council, and as things come up, we'll look to continue to engage further. We tend to every 4 to 6 months see this, so we might see you another 2 or 3 times this year in a formal meeting like this. And so looking forward to hearing how the desires and plans of the group are panning out over the rest of 2021. But thank you for taking the time and coming in here today to tell us about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councillors, the next item on our agenda is the confirmation of minutes from the 24th of March 2021.
So moved.
Tab 7, moved Councillor Alexander and seconded Councillor Epeha.
Yes.
Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favour say aye. Against?
Yes. I did have one discussion on the
matter arising from those minutes?
Matter arising
yeah,
from
sure.
minutes. It actually revolves around Councillor Lemon's comments around pathways. Just feedback from my committees is the infrastructure timeframe with which they're being repaired. There's concern from the committees around the level of workmanship done. And I just wanted to feed that back through to you today.
Yeah. So if there's particular spaces where it hasn't been done to community's expectation, encouraging the people that you're connected with to use Snapseed Solve to take photos of the situation, then we'll go straight to our staff. But thank you for raising again today. So declare this minutes true and accurate. The next piece is the district licensing report, and Malcolm Johnson's in the room. Hi, Malcolm. It's on page 19, tab 8. I'll hand the floor to you, Malcolm. Take us through the highlights of your report. I'll just press the microphone. Thank you.
Kia ora. I'll just take the report as read, and one of the highlights was the Selwyn Sounds on Saturday night. That went ahead and went very, very well. Back in March for our tavern and hotel licensees. Now, it was a joint workshop with the police and our road safety coordinator, and that was very well received, and it was a real highlight. So we had a lot of good feedback from that, and we're looking forward to running those every year. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions, Councillor Sev? Move on second. Sorry, Bob and Grant.
Just how's the Kerwi Tavern going? Is there any movement on that?
Yeah, so there hasn't been any application yet for a alcohol license, but I understand that things are still progressing in terms of a new build going on. It won't be the same type of building, but there will be another tavern going in there.
Thank you. And Councillor Miller.
Just a reflection on Selwyn Sounds. I don't have to do anything to do it, not the enforcement from the police was very good, and widespread stops as well. And feedback when I was stopped was that the response from our residents was good. There wasn't anyone driving around over the limit. Well, maybe there was, but I didn't. The policeman I spoke to said it'd be very good. So well done, Selwyn residents.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. Absolutely.
Okay. Mover and seconder, Miller and Mugford. Happy to move that report. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Declare it carried. Next up is my report on tab 9, page 25. Just another item to add in there out of interest today is the Mega Meet, which is Selwyn and Ashburton working together in a tourism space to connect operators with operators, and thinking about the changes that have happened over the last 18 months and pivoting towards a New Zealand space, but also thinking about gearing up for borders being opened again as well. And Selwyn's hosting that up in Terrace Downs with the two working together, supported by Christchurch NZ, and our staff have done a good job at pulling that together. And if it's still on at the end of this meeting today, depending on what time we finish, I'll head there just to congratulate them on the work that's been done. Are there any questions anyone has of my report? Yeah, Councillor Miller and Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. 3 questions, Sam. You're meeting with Marie Brannigan of Wairu Museum. Would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. 22nd of March, I met with her with Councillor Bland and an RSA member who is involved in looking after some medals at Wairu, sorry, not at Wairu, at Burnham Camp, and Wairu was there to provide some expertise and share a bit of their story around looking after things. And I guess it was acknowledged how hard it is to use volunteers to look after stuff. It's a similar story to what we've heard from heritage groups that have come and presented to us, that there's not a lot of money in the space, and capital investment is very expensive. It was interesting to hear the Wairu story, where there were, it was complex. There were different trusts, there were very different funding models, and it was an expensive annual operation. Not just the capital, but to look after things was very inexpensive. And I think at the end of that, Jeff, you might want to add in, but it was sort of said to Burnham, need to look at what their options are, and what Wairu was keen to provide expertise where they could. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, that's pretty much sums it up. It was a toe in the water sort of a meeting, and not a lot came out of it really. It was just, I guess all that came out of it is how difficult the road ahead is if we do want to tackle some form of museum or look after or preserve, our history and heritage. And again, it just reinforces that if you want to do it properly, you've got to put money down to do it, just like you have to put money down to build a park for children to play in, or a hockey turf, or anything else that costs money. You can't do it by drip feeding it.
Thank you. David, you were at the meeting. Is there anything else you'd like?
Yeah, I was. The only other feedback through you, Mr. Mayor, is that the group we met with were encouraged to put in a submission to our draft LTP outlining the details of their proposal and how we might become involved in that.
Thanks, Mark.
Second point was really just on March 30th, the meeting with the new school principal. We need to use the name that's been adopted for that school, which I unfortunately can't remember either, but we need to start socialising it and using it rather than referring to it by what was the working title. And finally,
Te Rohotu Whio.
Te Rohotu Whio.
thank you, Councillor. Well done. And your March 31st, the feedback you got from our colleagues in Waitaki?
So Waitaki are undergoing a number of visits similar to what we did, I suppose, before we ventured on some of our builds to understand what other councils have done. They've also looked at Ashburton and they had talked to others. They were very impressed with what had been built, and obviously with the cost factored in, we're very impressed with what we were able to deliver for our community at $20 million. Councillor Miller.
You largely answered my question I asked about the Wairua Museum, but it probably has further piqued my interest, I suppose, that they might put an application with a long-term plan. It seems astounding to me that an organisation that's based on culture, service and heritage would be coming to us when it's part of their ethos and part of their DNA, that they preserve their heritage and base their organisation on it. So I guess I'm putting a bit of a stake in the ground, I suppose.
Yeah, and I shared with them that we don't have any money in our current plans, and that's not something that we have seen as key going forward, which is why the encouragement to them was to submit, so that if we were going to make a different decision, it was going to be on the weight of submissions, not based on the discussion that have been had so far. I'm happy that I'll move you receive my report. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Gallagher. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. The next item is Community Services Facilities report, and ask Denise to come to the front of the room. This is the first one of these reports that we will receive, and in the same way that we've had a transportation and waters report. This is the Community Services report, which will become a monthly feature of our agendas, and in the background Tim Harris is furiously working away at a planning report, which will also form part of our standard procedure. It provides a way for not only us to stay updated on a monthly basis, but for staff to have a recognised mechanism for reporting back to council and the community about things that are going on. So Denise, thank you for preparing this, and if councillors have any feedback about the content, size, length, things that are missing, things that they'd like to see more about, then please share that with Denise so we can work to improve as we go forward. Denise, I'll hand the floor to you.
Tēnā koutou, ki te mihi ki te koromatua, ki te mihi ki ngā kai kaunihira, ki te mihi ki te kai whakahaere. The report that was, as Mayor Sam said, is the inaugural All of Community Services and Facilities report to Council. I apologise for its length, but quite a lot of information has been included to provide a more complete picture and to respond to some specific inquiries received, so future reports wouldn't be that length. While staff are happy to respond to any questions associated with that report, and there is a recommendation to be considered regarding a series of workshops, in the first instance, I'd like to just draw to your attention the fact that the Selwyn Youth Council report work plan was part of the documentation that you have received, and just further to what was described to you in terms of how the projects that the Youth Council was selected, just to let you know that there was a Dragon's Den exercise that was that became interestingly competitive amongst the staff, lobbying to get support from young people to participate in the various projects that we all felt would benefit from the input of young people. So it at the end it was a lot of fun, and it was interesting that there was actually without any manipulation quite a good spread in terms of interest in the various projects that were there, that lined up in by and large with people's career pathways or areas of interest. So the other presentation today is in relation to Te Ara Aotea. And I would like to introduce you to Puameria Parata Goodall, who is the Poahuria from Selwyn District, for Selwyn District Council. And she will be supported in this presentation today by Nikki Moen, who is the Arts, Culture and Lifelong Learning Manager for Selwyn Council. Puameria will talk to you about the story of the name of Te Ara Aotea and how and its relationship with the rooms and the functions within that building. And we'll also talk to you about some important dates coming forward. So Puameria and Nikki, if you just come up now. No, you go here. It's okay.
Tēnā koe. Nā reira, tēnā tātou katoa nei ngā mihi o tēnei uri o te rua hiki hiki, mihi kauana kia koutou i tēnei wā, te hari koa koutou mai nei. Puameria, and I am so pleased to be here today and a little bit excited and mostly kind of privileged. So I get to present today about Te Ara Aotea when there's a whole team been working on this project for some time. However, I will do my best by all of the team to introduce to you today Te Ara Aotea. Te Ara Aotea is the name that the Taumatu Runanga gave for this building. The Te Ara, the pathway, Aotea to space and beyond. Te Ara Aotea therefore means for us, I think we've translated it as the unobstructed trail to the world and beyond. The notion that sits behind the name Te Ara Aotea is the notion of us pushing out into the beyond, seeking knowledge. So we understand that we have a fair amount of knowledge, but there's also a lot of knowledge out there that we're seeking. So Te Ara Aotea gives us that notion. It also talks about those traditional trails that were travelled by not only my ancestors, but in fact many of your ancestors. They are the trails that my ancestors used to follow to find a resource, to find food, to travel north, south, east and west. They are the same trails that then happen as time passes in metal. So the railway trails that start to cross our landscape. So at some point, all of our ancestors have made a trail across this landscape. So Te Ara Aotea recognises that. So within Te Ara Aotea are a number of pai, or a number of places of which we have an opportunity to stop, to reflect, to meet, to gather, to learn. For this, what you're seeing behind me is the ground floor. The ground floor of Te Ara Aotea has three main pai that carry names which support the notion behind Te Ara Aotea. Those names, which I'm now going to introduce you to, the meeting rooms, are names based upon the theme not only of these trails and our navigating across our landscape, but more importantly, those horizons that are close to us, that knowledge that we know already, but also those horizons that we want our community to reach out into and beyond. So I'm going to introduce to you first the two meeting rooms, Huanui and Tahatu. Huanui is our ancestors, when they were creating trails, Huanui means the large pathway. So this is a main pathway. Why is one of our rooms called Huanui? It is about giving that notion of there are many pathways. We all have a pathway. We are all on a journey. When we are meeting in Te Ara Aotea, one of the rooms that we can meet in is Huanui, which helps remind us about we are on a journey. The significance of Huanui also is that it's a name for a kaka perch, so it references mahinga kai. Why were we travelling across this landscape? By and large, we were looking for a feed. So Huanui is one of those reference points that help to remind us of that. Beside Huanui is a second meeting room called Tahatu. Tahatu is, brings forward that notion of horizons. Tahatu is a horizon. So this is about encouraging us to look out and beyond. There is lots more knowledge out there. We know some stuff, but you know what? Let's try a little bit harder and see what else is out there. This is the purpose of a library. So Tahatu and Huanui, they are both on the ground floor of Te Ara Atea. The third main area that will receive a name within Te Ara Atea is Te Whare Tāpiri. Te Whare Tāpiri is the house of entertainment. It's the place where we do our theatre, it's the place where we do exhibitions, we do performances, it's the place where we go back and practice our traditional art forms, it's the place where we create new art forms. Te Whare Tāpiri, which could look like this during the day when we've got a performance on, could magically look like this. So those are the three main spaces that will be downstairs and receive a name: Te Whare Tāpiri, Huanui and Tahatu. Other spaces that are on the ground floor, which we wanted to highlight, was a place called a Wahi Tairongo. Wahi being a place, so the names that you start to see now, the signage you'll start to see within Te Ara Atea are hierarchical. So we do have room names, we also have significant place names. Wahi Tairongo is one of those. This is our sensory space. This one created a bit of a challenge for me to find the right sensory word in Māori to talk about sensory space. So Wahi Tairongo will sit within our tamariki area, our Wahi tamariki. Yes, we go. Another place that we'll have on the ground floor is a studio, a Wahi Auaha, a creative space. So in this space, we can do all sorts of stuff. We can create in this space. We also have a second space that will be beside this, which is where we can be a little bit more noisy, we can be a little bit more messy, possibly play with a little bit of water. Our Wahi Waihanga, Waihanga meaning to construct or to create. So these are a number of the spaces that will appear on the ground floor of Te Ara Atea. And now we're moving upstairs to the first floor. And in the first floor, there are how many? 4 main areas on the first floor. And the first of those that I want to introduce you to is Te Wakahuia. Te Wakahuia, when you see the main picture again, you'll see this little golden box that sort of gleams from the middle of the picture. That is Te Wakahuia, Te Waka, the vessel, huia, where we stored our huia feathers. Te Wakahuia, in my traditions, is the place where our chiefs would hold their most treasured of all taonga, and that was their huia feather. Only the chiefs had a huia feather, so they created and carved beautiful vessels to carry their huia feather. For us at Te Ara Atea, the place where we will hold our most taonga, our most tino taonga, it's really bad Māori and English, was, sorry about that, where we will store our most treasured items. It might be where we're going to be sitting and going through our family manuscripts. It might be the place where we are exhibiting some of our treasures, our taonga from the museum that come from this place, a place where we can stop and just sit and think about and reflect about those things that are our treasures. That will be done in Te Wakahuia. One of the other stories and traditions that plays out in Te Ara Atea is Toi Huarewa. Toi Huarewa refers to a tradition around tāwhaki and tāne nuiarangi. And the tradition in my traditions talks about the acquisition of knowledge. So tāne nuiarangi is tested, he travels up through the heavens to acquire the 3 baskets of knowledge. The last challenge he gets given before he can acquire those and go into the topmost heaven is to transition through this place, this horizon called Toi Huarewa. Once he crosses through this threshold, he then receives all of the knowledge that he needs to bring down to where we are today. So Toi Huarewa recognises that acquisition of knowledge. Here is another horizon for us to seek, and it's a windowless room. So you won't get disturbed by the view. Kapai, so the next room is Paitata. Paitata is a small meeting room beside Te Wakahuia. Paitata talks about that near horizon. So the near horizon, the knowledge we know, the knowledge that we can easily achieve is the reasoning behind this phrase. It comes from a larger whakatauki, which we're using a lot with Te Ara Atia, which talks about those near horizons, those short to medium term goals, with our last space therefore being Paitawhiti. Paitawhiti, Te Paitawhiti is the last space. This space is a meeting room without walls. So this space is in the middle of the stacks, and it allows us a view all the way through Te Ara Atia out into the world beyond. Hence its name, Paitawhiti, because this name encourages us to look past what we already know, look out into the beyond, push yourself beyond, go and seek that knowledge that no one else has found yet. So these are the spaces that sit within Te Ara Atia. The names of these spaces refer to journeys, trails, and to those horizons to encourage us to think a little bit harder about our knowledge acquisition. So, moving on from there, where are we at with Te Ara Atia? It's getting closer and closer. So what you're seeing now on the screen is that on the 25th of August, we will be having a whakatau whare. Whakatau to settle, whare the building. Whakatau whare. So this is, we are doing the blessing and opening as two separate occasions. The whakatau whare is more about the people who will be working in the building, our council, the people who have worked on the building, to have the opportunity to have time in that building, and to do that we need to introduce ourselves to the building. A whakatau whare, settle that building down, followed by a whakanoa, which is a cup of tea and a shared meal afterwards. So that will happen on the 25th of August. It will be led by Ngai Te Rua Hiki Hiki, and it will start at 8 a.m. because our kai karakia need to go to work. But also, it's the start of our work day, because at this point, the real work starts for the team, because we have a lot of work to do before opening day. So that is on the 25th. No. And
Yes. That's the date at the moment, pending any delays.
The actual opening date.
Yeah. So that's good. It's diaryable.
absolutely. And I'm going to hand to Nikki.
Thank you. My little bit is just to tell you that from the date of the blessing, we're going to be busy for about 5 weeks, putting in the shelving stacks, the furniture, the IT, the RFID, the cafe joinery, and the exhibition objects. And we need to keep that building as a construction zone effectively for those 5 weeks. So on the day of the blessing, you'll be able to totally explore the building, but it will be empty of things. And then we would really love it if you would start to plan to come back and visit us for a real tour any date onwards from the 11th of October. It will be great for our team because we need to learn how to do tours really well and to be able to tell the full story of the buildings and all of the objects. So by you booking in tours with us, it will give us an opportunity to practice over and over again. So we would like to put some control around tours, and at the moment, would you please book them in via me? And so there's total control at this stage. But we think we might be able to do 2, 3, 4 tours a day. You might be part of a small community group. We would welcome you bringing small groups as well. And that will get us ready for opening. At the time, we might grab people to join them up so that we don't have a big membership rush as well. But we will really welcome you bringing your community in, and we will show you around formally. But please, if we would appreciate if you could hold off until after the 11th of October. And then we're in the process. Bumeria is leading the planning of the official opening, which is going to be on the 20th of November. We're really keen to make that a full district-wide event. So we're looking at ways of making all of our residents feel that this is their facility, regardless of where they live and so on. So if you have any ideas about how we can make that happen, I would love to hear them from you, please.
So I know there was a lot of information about names and horizons and things, so I just happened to have prepared. What is now coming around to you is a glossary, firstly, of the Reo Māori signage that will start to roll out in Te Ara Atea, but also the names of the rooms and the kōrero behind each of those names. So this is our taonga to you. Tēnā tātou.
While Sam's distracted, I'll get in and say thank you very much for a great presentation. And we are, in our communities, really looking forward to Te Ara Atea being open and available. Nikki, I would suggest if you want to get the district feeling welcome, some buses from the further reaches to bring people to Ralston and Te Ara Atea is probably a great way of making them feel invited and involved.
Thanks, Bumeria. I think it's exciting to see it coming together and the naming of things and how things are placed and how they fit within the buildings. You know, it's part of the design, but it's actually part of the use of the space as well, which is really cool. And now we're heading towards an opening. Just even talking about tours, I'm like, yeah, this is a behind-the-scenes view for lots of people in our community. They'll be really interested in what you've shared with us today, but being able to see it firsthand. And like you say, the transition and change to something big and new doesn't happen quickly or instantly. And so providing opportunities for staff to be able to host in a new space and get used to language in a new way will be, those 5 weeks is an important time. So thank you for what you've presented. Denise, is there more that you want to talk about in here now?
Thank you. So just in conclusion, it's just an opportunity if there are any questions regarding the report itself, and also recognising that there was a recommendation that that the series of workshops that was proposed for those to meet with those committees of council other than community centre or reserve or pool committees is recommended to take place late July, August 2021. So I seek your agreement to that.
Thank you. And Nicole.
This was following on from what Bumeria had talked about, and thank you so much for those descriptions. Really, in the way that you said it as well, I can actually see it visually in the mind. And so those stories are so important for those namings. So I hope that, like on the sign, there'll be like this blurb that says everyone can read it and then be able to experience. So thank you so much for that.
Sophie.
Are we moving on to the further into the report?
General question.
Thank you. Just on page 28, we talk about the trial removal of overdue book charges. You know, I support the recommendation that we do this, but just that for those members of the public who haven't been at our workshops, and none of them will have been, that we have that extract from that workshop tabled so they can be included in the minutes so that they can understand why we've come to this conclusion. There'll be some people who may say, you should be charging, why aren't you? And others welcoming the change. So just to help them understand how we've reached this point.
Yes, I do have an excerpt here to be tabled, so it will go out with the minutes.
Great, thank you, Denise. Sophie.
Kia ora, Denise and Bumeria, Nikki and everybody. There's a whole heap of yous. It's great. The only comment that I have about the wider report was thank you very much for organising all the different workshops that have been going on for committees and community groups in general. It's really great to see those. one comment that I have heard from a few people who are interested in being part of committees going forward, whatever shape they may be, is that most of the workshops have been during working hours. And I was wondering if, potentially later on, seeing as there is further workshops anyway to happen July, August, is there possibly any way to run them again, but at hours that more people, particularly, working age members of the community who are, want to get stuck in. We need to encourage that. Can take part. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane.
Tēnā tātou. I ngā mana i ngā reo. E rau pau o ngai te rua hiki hiki. Tēnā rā tātou katoa Puamiria. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thank you very much for the presentation, Puamiria. Really appreciate it. And I think there's been more Māori words spoken in this chambers today than it has since I've been here, so I really appreciate the kōrero. And as you can see from the feedback, it was all quite still and silent because we're actually soaking all of that kōrero in. So ngā mihi nui ki a koe. And nau mai haere mai te ara ātia. I think it'll be an absolute jewel for our community, a beating heart of culture, which will have a greater community benefit to all. So thank you, and thanks for the presentation. Also a shout out to Leicester Library. Thanks very much for reading books to my children on the weekend. I really appreciate all of you guys' services, and well done at looking after our elderly, also with rates and that sort of thing. So great service, thanks. Oh, yeah, that's all so far.
Thank you. Mark, and then back to Sophie.
Thank you. Just one other point, thing of it. Will we make this available on our website? I think it would be a great resource for the community to be able to access as well. And then I have a question on page 38 around the other community funding. It starts, the second paragraph finishes saying that report is due March 31st. As chair of the Rural Sports Travel Fund Committee, I was a little disappointed that perhaps the chair of these committees hadn't actually been involved in this discussion. Because some of these, we're administering government funding and it's bound by their rules, and we can't sort of do too much to change how these committees work.
Just one comment that it was a desktop exercise to understand what the rules are that are prescribed for us. So this has not been intended as a consultation, but rather an internal process to get sorted out in terms of the future and what the rules are that are required and expected of us. Point noted.
Thank you, Sophie, and then Jeff.
I just realised that it's a good opportunity to say thank you to Hayley and Puamiria for sorting us out with a lovely Waiata group. It's great fun. We had a lovely sing-along this morning. A couple of extra people came along. It's great. Great way to start your morning or to spend your lunchtime. For any other staff members or councillors who'd like to join in. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. Jeff?
Yeah, firstly, thanks very much for that presentation. It was beautiful. I'm just going back to page 34, and it's the Events Marketing Fund. And it's just a small point, but one of the things that we were hoping to do was to have people from out of the district come into some of our events and some of the culture items that we have here. But I do see when I look down that where the funding's gone, it's gone to the Star newspaper, which is the Selwyn Times. And it just seems to me, looking at that, you're actually advertising within your own district. If you're only advertising within your own district, you're only going to get basically going to get your own people. Where if we thought about advertising perhaps of other journals, the press newspaper, for instance, or wider of South Island or even New Zealand, just to get that extra exposure, because you're kind of a very limited market with the Selwyn Times. Not that it's great for Selwyn, but if you're wanting people from other districts, you need to spread your wings a bit wider.
Thank you for that comment. And yes, there have been a number of others, including bus backs that were going in and out to the city, as some of the electronic signage on Blenheim Road and other parts of Christchurch. And as well as that, it's also about encouraging our local people to explore locally. So we tried to do a mix of both. But yes, point noted.
Thanks, Jeff and Shane.
Good job with the Ellesmere Heritage app. I've downloaded that, I've started using that. Is there opportunity to expand on that? I'm thinking with Ellesmere and Taumotu.
Absolutely. That's all part of the program. And if there is interest in terms of some of that, what we're doing in that space around the Selwyn stories, we can certainly build that into the next bit of a feature.
And one more question. The great making a donation to Punua Te Hinapō books and also to the prison. Well done there. Is there any opportunity to perhaps run more engagement events in the youth residential Te Punua Te Hinapō?
Yes, certainly we have put our hand out to offer that on a number of occasions, and there are conversations ongoing. But if there are openings that you see or opportunities that you're aware of that you could connect us into, we'd be very open to that as well.
Very easy. One last question. Sorry, page 42, looking for further events. Is there any opportunity for Matariki events at all? Or could there be?
Absolutely. There's a schedule of that, and we can talk about some of those. I guess that's the beauty of these more regular reports. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise, and well done on dragging so many of your team into a meeting. Tim Harris, you've left him for dust, and Douglas often only can get 2 or 3 of his team in. So you've done well to have so many come and cheer you on today. Mover and seconder to receive the report, Epihar and Alexander. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you. Next item is tab 11, page 71. It's Kui Water Treatment Facility Notice of Requirement Decision. Someone to move and second this report, or do you want staff to present any information on it? Bob will move. Sophie, happy to second this report? Yeah. Is there any discussion on it or questions you have for Robert? All those, sorry, Sophie.
Sam, I was just going to hope that Robert, like the previous reports, will table the Commissioner's recommendation to be included in our minutes, because it's important that, again, people can understand what the actual recommendation was. I know it'll be on our website somewhere, but sometimes that can be tricky to navigate and find this information. And it's important to see how the process works, particularly when it's a planning process, that it's council applying for permission from council. It's really good when the community can read these reports and understand that it's done in such a way that we're not just shaking our own hand and saying you can do what you like.
Yeah, certainly. So apologies for leaving it off, and we can append those in the future as well. So definitely table that. Sophie.
Yeah, my only question is, so again, looking at the report that Councillor Alexander just mentioned, and in the report here, it's saying that there's going to be some planting across the roadside end, but just a fence on the internal boundaries. Now I know that the section to the south now has a residential dwelling on it, and I believe the one to the west does as well. The tanks are going to be 6 metres high, a 1.8 metre fence. It would be really nice to have some planting around that as well, I guess, if possible. I don't know, just wondering if they've been contacted or if they know much about it, that this is going in behind them.
I don't think you know further questions. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, declare it carried. Thanks, Rob. Next is page 76, tab 12, Water Services Monthly Update. Elaine and Murray, welcome to the front of the room.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. So we're reading through our water services report on page 76, and we'll start with wastewater. For each of the waters, we're actually going to have a very short synopsis of what we've got in our long-term plan consultation, so I'm going to read through that. You're well aware of it, but it's quite good just to always get that out there. So for wastewater, the first one and probably the largest matter for consultation is the Darfield wastewater system. That's for Darfield and Kirwi. So that's going to be interesting to get the community's feedback, and we're really looking forward to reading through that. I lost that for a second there, sorry. For the second one on page 77 now is the Pines wastewater treatment plant. So we're looking at duplicating that plant. And the exciting part of that is that the scale of the project allows council to move towards a resource recovery treatment process. So as an example, with anaerobic digestion, we can move to having an energy recovery. So we're not just producing waste and disposing of it, we're actually regenerating electricity and making use of that resource. The third point is the Ellesmere wastewater treatment plant. We're looking at connecting that up through to the Pines treatment plant, final treatment. So there'll be some preliminary treatment done in Ellesmere, then piping that up to Pines. And the beauty of that is it takes us away from an area which has an increasing groundwater, sensitive environment, and puts into a more sustainable future. The last one is Upper Sowan Huts. And so if the Ellesmere project goes ahead and also the Pines duplication, then it gives us an opportunity to consider what we do with Upper Sowan Huts wastewater, and there's a potential we could pipe that through to that same pipeline and up to Pines, but that's a decision to be made sometime in the future.
Okay, and then just a little bit on the water stimulus projects. That's the Darfield and Crowley to Pines pipelines. The project's been gathering a little bit of speed recently. The design work and site investigation work has been continuing, and draft documentation is due to be sent through from the designer to the contractor for pricing of the pipeline next week. So we're hoping to get a contractor's estimate through at the start of May to give us an idea about pricing. But a detailed update will be given to you all in the councillor's briefing.
Thank you. On that Sowan Huts piece you mentioned before, where just the timing that we're currently under with the extension of our consent to deal with wastewater at the current Sowan Huts site, will we be put under pressure time-wise, waiting for a decision on whether the Ellesmere scheme joins and then running the numbers to try and figure out how we fund the Sowan Huts change, and then bumping into the end of an extension that's already, giving us a bit of grace at the end of our current consent?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to keep that in mind. So the consent's been lodged. We're working through further information requests with Environment Canterbury, so the process is ongoing. And that consent was to give us a 4-year period, so that should fit in well for our deliberations going forward. So it's going to be tight, so it won't be tight to sit in our laurels, but we'll need to move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Mark.
Thank you. With the number of sort of pipelines spreading across our district through our rural areas, would there be an opportunity if a rural ratepayer potentially wanted to or needed to connect to one of these pipelines, if their septic tank fails and it may be actually more economic to connect to and pay the headworks charges to join the system, is there an opportunity to get pipelines?
Yeah, I think it is. One thing I will note, though, with some of our critical trunk assets, we don't want multiple connection points, but we can provide certain laterals that there can be points on that. So the Darfield pipeline would be a great example of that, where it's actually running as a gravity pipeline, and so we could connect in at those manhole terminal locations. With the Ellesmere through, there will be some points where we can connect, but it's probably a bit more limited.
Thank you. Just as I say, that with the cost of a new septic tank system, that it may be actually for some households relatively close to the pipelines, it may be a more economic solution, and again, ultimately more environmentally sound to join the treatment system rather than standalone treatments. So thank you for that answer.
Deborah.
Thanks for sending through the report on the compliance issue with regards to Pines treatment plant. I just want to know, with regards to the resource recovery treatment process, is that actually going to affect the nitrate loading in any way, shape or form, or E. coli that is currently being applied to the land through the consent?
So, I mean, the idea of having one centralised plant is that we can put all our efforts into that one area and do things really well. So as we increase the capacity of the plant, the only impact we'll have would hopefully be to make that better. So we'll be improving treatment options instead of making things worse.
So will it actually, what capacity increase would this actually allow to join the system? I mean, what have we got? How much have we got at the moment? What have we planned for? And what improvement would this, how many PE would this actually add to the system without actually increasing the land area, etc.?
So the current plant is designed to be constructed in modules, and so as growth happens, we add extra modules onto there. We're sitting roughly at about 43,000 population equivalents as a point we're at. The current plant is designed to be built up to 60,000 population equivalents, and we call it Pines 120 because that will ultimately have 120,000 population equivalents capacity-wise. Yep. So we've got some time to go. It's 3 times the capacity that we currently have in that design. And as we move closer to that many years down the track, then we can always look at duplicating again, I suppose, making it bigger. So we have the vision of 300,000 people in Sal in one day. Well, then this plant's not going to do that, but it's going to take us a long way there. So this plant takes us out beyond the 30-year horizon.
Thanks, Mary Elaine. Do you want to move on to potable water?
Cool. So like wastewater, we've got a number of, well, it's not like wastewater, you're pleased to know, but in a similar vein, we have got some LTV consultation matters for water as well. And the first one is keeping our drinking water safe. So Council has two proposals or 2 options. One includes the potential to chlorinate in the future if needed. And the second is to provide significant funding to avoid chlorination if possible. And there's lots of ifs in there, purposely exaggerated because there is a lot of unknowns to see how things go. Council will be applying for exemption to chlorination once Taumata Arowai stands up, and we have the ability to do that. But we don't know where we sit yet and what the requirements are, what the exemption criteria is at this point. So we're going to carry on providing good, wholesome, safe water to the Sauron residents for the first option, but if it doesn't meet the benchmark, then we're not going to spend more money to chlorinate. The second option would be to spend more money to try and meet those benchmarks. The second one is the water supply rate. Currently we have some of the cheapest water in New Zealand at 50 cents per cube. We are looking at increasing our rate intake, and so we have 2 options. One is to increase the volumetric charge at a greater rate than the base charge, and the second option is to increase both of them at the same rate. So that's something we're consulting on in this LTP. And the third one, which I thought was of interest, was the addition of a rural water charge. We've had a lot of feedback from our rural communities wanting additional water units, particularly in the Horata scheme, but also in the Melbourne Hills. And so this project puts in additional capacity into those schemes so we can provide that need for our community.
Councillor, let's talk about potable water then, and Murray and Grant and Jeff.
Yeah, so it's probably not something you can answer, Murray, but I guess when we're going to we'll get submissions on the ability to chlorinate or the desire to chlorinate or to fund, above that. I'm just thinking the time frame, I guess, from the new regulator, Taumata Arowai, that we're unlikely to get an answer before then as to what their direction is going to be. And it's going to I'm making a statement here, not a question. What I should say is, do we expect to get a direction by then, in your opinion, as to whether that's feasible or not feasible?
Yeah, so it is hard, and there's no firm comment I can make on that. What I understand is going to be the case is that there won't be necessarily a criteria listed tick box to go through. Yes, you can be non-chlorinated, but it's going to be more of an independent international panel of experts who will assess each water supply. And I also point out that each individual council will have to pay the cost for that review to be undertaken. So there's no tick box type solution we're expecting, but we're more like we put our best case forward, I guess, reviewed by an international panel of experts, and then there may be some to-do lists, or it may just be a flat no.
So follow-up question, are we likely looking at water safety plans and other councils, are we likely to get a steer into what direction those ones that are currently up for approval go before we're sitting on deliberations? Where are you seeing that with the rest of, say, Canterbury, for instance?
Yes, I think overall, all in New Zealand, there's only three water safety plans that have been approved, and we've got one of those, but all 3 have chlorination. So there's no water safety plans that have been approved without chlorination at this point. Interesting, though, is that we've moved to a new regime, if it's called a regime, is that Taumata Arowai no longer approves water safety plans. So basically they say, you submit your plan, we'll accept that, but you, council, takes responsibility for it. So no longer is it somebody independently signing off, it is council, this is how we're going to manage the risk, and we then have to live by that plan. So there is a lot of uncertainty. It was something that we made in our submission on the water services bill. try and get some clarity. Like, do you have to coronate from the first date before you get an exemption, or can you wait until you get an exemption? We're yet to find that out yet.
You, Grant and Jeff.
Well, it wasn't what I was going to talk about. I was just astounded what you said. So just to reconfirm that, they are no longer going to approve our water safety plans. We submit them, and they are going to say, that seems to defeat the whole purpose of a water services regulator. Have we got the right in the stick? Have I missed something there?
Well, yeah, now that public, I hope I have got the right in the stick. But no, that is my understanding, and I suppose it's going from a point whereas you sort of submit your best foot forward, and someone else puts your name to it, where they're saying, actually, water supply, you are responsible for this. So I think, so if something goes wrong, it's purely you're taking the risk. You have to manage it, and you need to make sure that you take.
So it'll become a straight political decision again, not actually a science-based, water-based decision. It's astounding.
Yeah, I suppose
we just check that, making sure we are.
Yeah, no, we're happy to report back on that for sure.
Yes, sounds astounding to me. Sorry, I diverged a bit. Concerned of Lincoln ratepayer, I've got a diligent ratepayer who asked me a question about the LTP. Had a look at our annual accounts and said, why are you increasing your water charges? You have plenty of money in your water account. Is it a demand management tool, or do you genuinely need the money?
Trying to see Calvin, he's sort of dashed down this sheet. I mean, what we do is, I mean, it may be that the account is looking fine at one point in time, but then as the 10 years rolls through, there's a lot of capital works which we need to fund. I don't have the accounts on me, so I can't really comment on that. But the other matter would be is that our reserve accounts are often quite high for growth type projects. We bring in DCs and then we spend it. So I'm not sure what account it is. We'll have to.
I'm going to be at Lincoln Library tomorrow night. I need a better answer than that. Kelvin. Kelvin.
What Murray said is what Murray said was correct.
What he said, yeah. Okay.
What he said, yeah. It's projection through that 10-year period, and of course we're making sure that the spend on the infrastructure in the future is not just paid for by the future ratepayer, it's paid for by all ratepayers over that 10-year period. So it's a smoothing of that cost. So yeah, while the balance is looking okay now, there's more spend coming in the future. We need to balance that out. But I can give you a little bit more detail to take to make it.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Murray. Hey, just one step back. I was going to ask questions at the end, but I didn't realise we were going to as we went through. But it was just a little bit to do with Selwyn Huts. and I did receive an email last night from one of the Selwyn Hut people. And they, I'm not going to go through the letter because that's for another meeting, specifically under no doubt we'll have on Selwyn Huts. But the point the person was making was that we're charging them quite a lot of money. And it reads just a little bit here. I'm astounded that you propose to charge us $4,300 per annum for a hut licence, $1,000 per annum for rates, and a price yet to be determined for an upgraded sewage system. And I just wanted to know, are you liaising with say Douglas Marshall and the finance team? Because we're actually proposing something different now, aren't we? Well, it's a proposal, but we're actually working, I would imagine, on what we were thinking about 6 months or a year ago before this came on being. So the communication perhaps needs to be tidied up between your department, some of the departments within this organisation, and the hut owners, so that we don't get these sort of emails. There may be, the email that's come to me may well be valid, and I think before you start charging people for something, that we need to get our ducks in a row a little bit too. But I can't say much more on that, but I do suggest that we have a meeting in regards what we charge, what we're actually potentially likely to be charging, because sometimes good charging something for this when we're actually thinking about changing our plans to that. See how I see it.
Yeah, it's probably well beyond what I can talk about, apart from saying that this is a lease agreement, and so it's not a rate that we'd normally get involved in. And regardless of the option, they're roughly around that sort of $3 million mark, but I can't comment more about the lease than that, unfortunately.
Just with regards to the lease issue, I think the information that I have, and this is from another hut owner who made inquiries, the lease at what's being proposed is seen to be quite reasonable when you look at comparing it with other leases on other lands similar throughout New Zealand.
I just don't want to, we're not going to talk about selling huts and leases. Good to have that information. Thank you. And thank you, Jeff, for raising it. And we need to have an agenda matter to talk about selling huts specifically, and then we have all the information prepared beforehand rather than delving too deep into that right now. Mark.
Yeah, Councillor Hassan made reference earlier to compliance report about the pines. I just asked that that also be entered into the minutes so the public will have an easy place to find the report that was referred to in our discussion.
Just the last thing I'd say on water is you mentioned water charges before. I think I just got a bill last week for $76, I think it was, for 6 months water use. We've got a very brown lawn and don't have much in the garden to water, although things bog for a couple of plants. But when we're thinking about what the charges look like for a family who can then choose how they water or not water things, I think the route that we've gone around monitoring use, measuring it and charging on their basis is really important that we hold on to that. And as we think about a future that may not be quite in our control, I think one of the key negotiating points for us should be pushing to continually have a rate-based charge, which looks at a use-based charge, should I say, that's in there, because most other councils aren't adopting that strategy. We'd be in a minority at the moment, and it would be a big disadvantage to users and so on if we were to move away from that, having gone through the pain initially, but now I think the upside of changing the system to a metered rate system. So thank you for, Murray, it was you and others before you worked to try and move us that direction. Yeah, well done on doing that, and we're leaders in the South Island now because of it.
I was at a meeting at Colgate last night, and the question came up on restricted supplies. Is there any point, or they would like to see water meters put in even there, because a lot of them believe that they're not using anywhere near the water, and some believe they're getting more, as I say. So is it ever going to happen that places that are in restricted supply would also have a water meter? I know it's sort of counteracts one another, but
yeah, probably not. Just the way the scheme was originally set up with the pipe sizes, you wouldn't be able to provide an on-demand connection to a rural restricted supply, unfortunately. For those who have more water than they need, they can relinquish units, and that means they pay less in rates, but of course they also get less water. And as I mentioned before, we do have that consultation item at the moment, so if people want more water and the restricted supplies are restricted in capacity at the moment, there's ability to get more units in the future once those upgrades are done. Okay, land drainage. So there's just one matter in the consultation document which talks about the transition from individual committees through to a district-wide land drainage committee like we had for water races. One of the first responsibilities of that committee will be to establish a new rating structure for the district. So just so we've moved to district-wide rating for water and wastewater and stormwater and water races, land drainage is the one that's probably lagging a bit behind on that, as we hope to bring them up to speed in the new year. On that same line, Osborne's Drain is just one of our land drainage schemes, and I thought it was going to be a very brief overview of that. I won't dwell on it too long. But in 2016, we received our first global consent, catchment management consent for that scheme, and there's a working party that's been working really well since that date, and we don't talk about it very often, so just drawing your attention to that. The members include Environment Canterbury, Runanga, Department of Conservation, South District Council staff, and committee members from the Osborne's Drain Land Drainage Committee. So just to bring that to your attention.
So Living Waters, so the working group has now started looking at the current L2 catchment and understanding the current maintenance practices and issues within the catchment. The idea being that we can develop a long-term plan for the catchment that enables suitable management and protocols and protects biodiversity and cultural and ecological values for years to come. So this monthly working group is only just started, and there's website updates available that we can send a link through if you're interested in keeping up to date. So the Leeston bypass, the stage 4 development is currently going through prolonged land issues. So staff and consultants are working through that. It's just to note that there's going to be a delay on that. And then the Horata, so a number of actions are now being closed out on the work plan, and then the next remaining action is the first stage of the Bailey Road drainage works. This has been priced, and the timing of those works is being worked out with the landowners and stakeholder parties involved.
Mainly just to thank the staff for all the work that they put in, especially Hororata and that, working with ECAN and Doc and those sorts of places, and for putting up with me asking questions all the time. But it's really appreciated the work that has been done, because I know it has been a huge amount.
I missed a wee bit of really exciting news in the L2 Living Waters presentation. After 2 years of prolonged construction, we're nearly ready to launch our new weed boat. It's the sole vessel I think Selwyn District Council owns, I think, as a landlocked, basically, organisation. So there is going to be a ceremony or function. I'll watch the space, I suppose. We'll try and organise something pretty good for that. And there's some naming and maybe some refreshments at the expense of Hororata or something like that.
Bottle of champagne on the side, crack it open. On that stormwater piece, I guess, from Bob and Murray have been leads in Easton and Melv and Hororata work particularly, and what's going on. So I just want to acknowledge the work that you two have done to work with staff to get to a point where we're now completing jobs. And not that we want to see another 2013 rainfall this winter, but it'll be nice to be able to test out the stuff that's been put in. So it's great that you've been able to do it, because we know that severe storm events are going to become more of a common occurrence, and well done on getting that work done. Three Waters review, if you want to touch on that, and anything else before the end of the report.
No, I think the Three Waters review is probably just ticking along. Up ours and Waterhouse closure, we're making some good progress on that. It has taken a little bit longer, but we are a pretty good solution we're very proud of, which we'll bring to council next month. It's actually the 9th of June, so a little typo there. No, I think that's all. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the report to Sam. Look, just a big thank you to you both for hosting us last week with the site visit to Claremont and Halbert. And I think the comment I made, I'm sure I made it in the meeting, if I didn't miss my chance to rectify that now, is it's really wonderful to see the quality of workmanship that was in there, and the liaison between our contractor Cyclone and yourselves, staff here at SDC, and the surety that that's given the Water and Risk Committee about our safety of our water, and the thought and the forward planning that's going into delivery of a standardised system for meeting compliance. And I think that's reflected, Murray and Elaine, in the and that's being one of, as you said, one of three to gain a water safety plan, and I'm sure it won't be the last that we achieve. So well done.
Again, moved by Murray, seconded by Shane. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you, Elaine. Thanks, Murray. The next item is Register of Documents signed and sealed. Moved Miller, seconded Gallagher. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Item raised in public forum. As far as the Youth Council is concerned, we'll just receive another report from them, and if there's any further work to be done, Sophie's the key liaison there. And from the Davina's presentation, David, can we get some staff analysis on what was presented, and thinking about where the best spaces for each of the items raised to actually be decided, because some of it won't be this table, but just to get that advice back from Tim or yourself at a subsequent meeting would be good.
Yeah, no, we will do that. I thought your comments were quite salient about the process through the district plan review as well. So,
councillors, does that cover your expectations of what might occur post those presentations? Yeah. No.
I guess we'll communicate that back
to Davina. Yes.
As well. So yeah.
Resolution to exclude the public. Moved Jeff, seconded Shane. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. And 10 to 3, we'll take